Brothers and sisters, it's so good to be with you here today. My name's Father Alan Michael Muench, and I'm going to share how the Lord has worked in my life to bring me here. But I know behind the ways that the Lord has called me, the response that I've been giving to Him, that I continue to give to Him, are so many people who are praying for me, who have instilled the faith in me as well. And so just a thank you, first and foremost, for your support of vocations, for the priesthood, for religious life. It's really very beautiful and essential, right? And the role of the church, right, to be praying for, calling forth from her people, spiritual fathers, spiritual mothers. And so I'm excited to be able to share with you what the Lord has done in my life to take a young boy who is timid and afraid and would not have thought to be serving the Lord in this capacity to now being a priest here down in Dallas. So as was mentioned, I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My parents, my family was Catholic, so I was raised up in the church, but from an early age I kind of saw that there wasn't there was something more that was, I think, maybe lacking. I think it was right after my first communion. I remember which house I was in because we moved like every 2 years, and so I was remember which house I was in one night before I was going to bed, and just thinking to myself, if God's so important, why didn't we go to Mass? Why don't we go to Mass on every Sunday? And again, this was just something that stood out to me as a child, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy who had just received First Communion. And it was the importance of the Eucharist, and not that I, knew God personally, but it was just more of like, I know this is important. Why not go to Mass every Sunday? And so I promised as a 7-year-old that when I turned 16 and I could drive myself, I would drive to Sunday Mass, which is kind of crazy. It probably would have been way easier to say, hey, Mom and Dad, can we just please go to Mass on the weekend? But no, my plan was double my lifespan and some change once I could drive myself. So growing up in Wisconsin was great. I had a lot of family there. We moved down to Flower Mound, Texas right before high school, and at first that was really difficult. I thought that was like my worst fear, to leave behind all my friends, all my family, to be somewhere new. But in hindsight, I really see that as a gift from the Lord, protecting me, because the friends that I had up in Wisconsin, I'd known them for a while, but they weren't the best influences. They're already getting into some not good things, and I think if I'd stayed around, that would have just been, I would have been influenced by that, I'm sure, as well. And so moving down to Texas was really a kind of a new beginning. And I got really involved in tennis. Tennis was like my sport. I played on the high school team. I made one of my best friends from the high school tennis team, who himself was Catholic. He understood the faith better than I did, and even challenged me at times because I didn't agree with everything the church taught, but he was willing to share not just the truth with me, but also like respectfully hear me out. Like, why do I think some of the things that I do? He was also the first one, my friend John, to take me to adoration at St. Anne's. I'd never experienced adoration before, and if you've never been to St. Anne's, we have a 24/7 perpetual adoration chapel. And so he was the first one to introduce me to that form of prayer, which was something that I continued to frequent over the years. He was also the first one to, I think, show me what real friendship looks like, someone that could... there was some things going on in my family, and able to share that with him, as well as he share with me some of the struggles that he was having. And so just really coming to find a good friend in high school. As I was going through, I did start going to Mass. I drove myself as a 16-year-old, but I still wouldn't say that, I saw the faith as being important. And I knew as much as I could, I was trying to live the faith. I was trying to pray even at night before going to bed. But there was still a lot that I didn't know, didn't understand. I just saw it as something good to do. And so when I went to college, that's where things really shifted for me. I was looking to play college tennis. I loved the Midwest, so I wanted to go back to kind of my roots. And so I went up to the University of St. Thomas to play tennis, to study psychology. And I had the opportunity, not many people came from Texas to go up to that school. It's much more local. You're from Minnesota, you're from Iowa, from Wisconsin. And so, no one else from my school was going up. And I had the chance to live on, say, like the Catholic men's floor. That was, one of the options that you could pick. But I decided I'm not going to do that because, I don't know, they might be kind of weird. So I'm not going to do that. That was my thought, my perception. I was there was a floor that was like out of state, out of a kind of experience. And so I figured, okay, I could meet some people and all of that. And I went to school knowing that, like, I didn't want the typical college experience where you think of like partying, chasing women, like all of that. I really wanted to find good friends like I had in high school. And growing in the faith, I was, I guess, kind of open to that, but it wasn't like at the forefront of my mind going to this school. Well, the Lord, again, in His providence, placed me just right where I needed to be. On this floor that I was at, I met a couple guys, actually brothers, who were from Arlington, and became good friends with them. And again, one of the men, Nick, he was his faith with the Lord was clearly there was something different. The way that he spoke about prayer, the way that he spoke about others' difficulties, like there was something different about this guy. And so his friendship was really helpful. I got invited on a couple retreats that our campus ministry was putting on, and one of them was called Kairos. And on this retreat, again, I was busy, student, many other things I wanted to do. I really didn't want to go on this. The selling point for me, though, was incredible food was going to be offered. It was at this called Gainey Conference Center in Owatonna. And I mean, like, no other food on a retreat is ever compared to that food. It's like 5-star hotel quality. That was part of the selling point. But the selling point was the guy who was inviting me said, "Hey, there's a 4-to-1 girl-guy ratio," And I thought, okay, that's a pretty good selling point. So I went on this retreat and had small group and again, just like encountered people who had really experienced challenge in their life. I mean, just incredible difficulties, but who still trusted in the Lord, who still had faith. And so this was just eye-opening to me to actually see people who seemed to know the Lord in a deeper way. And on this retreat, it was a Saturday afternoon, the retreat leader got up and just gave us like free time. It was basically not to go hang out and do things. It was, okay, go take a nap or go pray. Just be in silence, be with the Lord. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but I'm sure in some way it inspired what happened next. Is I went off in beautiful Minnesota, walking around outside and just really like convicted that I ought to offer my life back to the Lord for all that He'd given to me, all that I'd received. And so I just remember like walking out kind of in the middle of nowhere, making sure no one else was looking at me because I was kind of nervous. I didn't want anyone to see this, but I just felt like, I opened my hands up and just made a prayer of, Lord, I surrender my life to You. Not knowing what that would mean, not thinking that would mean priesthood, even down the road, but just like, Lord, I'm, whatever You want, I want to follow You. So that retreat experience really changed things for me. I came back wanting to share the faith in a way that I hadn't before, like really wanting people to know Jesus, but still also having a lot of questions. I went back for Christmas break, and I remember thinking like, why do I believe in God? Why do I believe the Catholic Church is true? Just all these questions about, like, how do I know that wasn't just a nice psychological experience? It's psychology, it's a very skeptical field. And so I just had a lot of questions, like why I believe this is true. And this was actually right at the point, I watched Richard Dawkins' God Delusion just to try and figure out why do people not believe in God. And then Father Robert Barron at the time had just started his YouTube channel, and he was putting out videos on the existence of God. And so this was just kind of like opening my eyes more to like an understanding of the faith in a way that I didn't have growing up, read Scott Hahn's Rome Sweet Home and just came to more and more believe, like, no, I believe who Jesus says he is, and that he founded the Catholic Church, and grew in a lot of faith, walking with the Lord. There was daily mass on campus. We had adoration chapel, confession, and so it was just so many opportunities, beautiful communities to be a part of as well. Priests that I got to know for the first time. My sophomore year in college, I started altar serving, and got to know some really good priests while I was at St. Thomas, just on a personal level. And kind of by that time, priesthood started coming up. It was like, I've been giving my life more and more to the Lord. There's seminarians around me because they have both a minor and a major seminary at St. Thomas. And so, I'm seeing that and resistant, though, really kind of like reluctant. I had said, Lord, I give you everything. I want to follow you. But at this point in my life, it was there was reservation. And even though I was saying, yes, Lord, whatever it is, it was really, Lord, please don't call me to the priesthood. I want to say yes to you, but I hope it's something different. Because I really wanted to be a husband. I really wanted to be a father. I have younger siblings, and so I love little kids, and just really thought like, yeah, I'd love to be a father. So it was tough that sophomore year of college as I was kind of wrestling with this, and there was a young lady involved too that I really liked, and so that just made it all the harder. But that at this point it wasn't going anywhere, and I was invited to go serve with Net Ministries, this Catholic youth organization that sends out teams of young people to share the faith with middle school and high schoolers. And Nick and Nolan, who now live in Grapevine, the brothers who I was sharing about, they had both served with Net Ministries. And so, Nick really talked it up, and he said, when you do Net someday, you'll understand what I'm saying, as he was, sharing about all these stories and the crazy things that took place. And eventually came to a point of decision of what was I going to be doing this next year. And it was the day Pope Francis was elected that I finally had everything set straight. And a friend of mine asked me, he heard that I got accepted to Net, I got accepted to go study in Rome. I had another plan, everything would have gone well in place with that. And so he said, what are you going to do? And this is specifically with Net. And he was so excited because he had done all of these things. And I said, I don't know. And for some reason, his words just struck me. He said, it's a yes or no question. And of course, I didn't have to answer him right then. But for some reason, in his question, like that question right there, it just made sense. And so I was like, yes, I'm going to go serve with Net. And this was a decision to leave school behind for a year, to leave this relationship, to leave my friends, all of that, to go serve the Lord. And I think in that yes, to kind of surrender what was going on around me, my heart opened up more and more to what God was actually asking of me. And so I remember that summer, as I was still just reflecting on what am I going to do with the rest of my life. I originally wanted to be a counselor, then that shifted to be a professor, to do research, that sort of stuff. But that question of what am I going to do with the rest of my life came up. And I remember for the first time ever, just like sitting on my bed and thinking to myself, I want to be a priest, and I don't think there's anything else that I want to do. Like nothing else would seem to satisfy. That I wanted to bring Christ to people in the way that a priest does, through the sacraments, the way that I had come to know the Lord through confessions and Holy Mass and all of that. And so there was just a real shift that took place in my own life from that moment. There was a peace, and as I was traveling around the country putting on these retreats, we stayed with host families almost every night, different people, and they'd always ask the two same questions. Why are you doing this? What are you going to do after this? And so every time I would just say, I'm going to be a priest, like fully. There was no, like, I might be a priest, I'm not really sure. There was just peace. And every time I would say that to the families or whoever I was with, there was a peace. And And even that year on the road, the three of the men on my team, I was doing some work one night in another room, and the three other men were going to sleep, and they were kind of having pillow chat, just talking about the future, talking about their future wives and how they wanted to love their spouses. And I just had this image as I was working in the other room, kind of listening to them, of me like coming home to a house, a family, and like taking off my coat, putting it on a coat rack, something like that. And there was something about it that just seemed off. Like coming home to a family didn't sit well with me, and so that struck me, because I was like, why is that? What does that mean for me? So taking that to prayer, I felt like what the Lord was telling me through that is, you're called to be a father of a larger community, to be a spiritual father to many. And so that was really kind of the first time that I believed the Lord was calling me to spiritual fatherhood in a way that, like, in that particular sense, with that kind of direction and clarity. And so after I finished this year with that, it still wasn't like, I'm going to go enter seminary right after this. I didn't know where the Lord was calling me. I had a lot of questions. I was originally from Wisconsin, studying now in Minnesota. My family was down in Texas. I thought about religious life a little bit, there's all these questions. And so I went back to school. I got to study in Rome for a semester and talked to a Jesuit priest about the Jesuits. There was a religious community called Pro Ecclesia Sancta, which is an offshoot of the Jesuits based in Peru. And I really considered them. I spent a lot of time with them and was discerning if this is where the Lord was calling me. And during that time, had to come to realize that the Lord wasn't calling me to this. I had to kind of separate myself from this community, because I would take steps forward, only to realize, like, okay, this is not where God is calling me to. There's not peace. It was a lot of making decisions out of fear, out of like, what if I'm not doing God's will? There wasn't a real freedom there. And so I learned a lot about discernment in that time. As I graduated school, I had switched my degrees from psychology to philosophy, because I was already convinced that God was calling me to the priesthood, and I knew that if I studied philosophy, that was what priests studied, and so I would already be getting a leg up on my seminary formation. Studied philosophy, studied Catholic studies, psychology, and after graduating, I'd been meeting with Father Edwin Leonard, my now pastor, for a long time. He was vocations director. He had served with NET as well. His sister served my year, and so I remember when we were going off to NET together, we came up to the altar at the 4:30 Mass, and Father Edwin blessed myself and his sister as we were going to go serve our missionary year. So kind of a cool, like, full circle. And he even came up he gave my team's retreat, because we came and did retreats actually in Dallas here. I did retreats at St. Monica's, St. Martin of Tours. I think my team did St. Francis of Assisi in Frisco. So my team was where we were here in Dallas. This was back in 2013, 2014. And I'd been meeting with Father Edwin because I knew him, and he was vocation director. So every kind of Christmas, every summer break, we would get together to chat. He had to be really patient on me, because I wasn't ready to. I didn't see the Lord calling me to Dallas yet. And so as I was graduating school, I wanted to go back to serve with NET as a supervisor, because I'd seen just how much good this ministry had done in the transformation of my life, in my teammates' lives, and loved the mission. And so went back to serve as a supervisor, caring for 2 teams, and loved it. It was an incredible year of just living with other young men and women who were my age, pursuing the Lord. Scotland came on the table. They wanted to open an office up in Scotland, and so I said yes to go out to Scotland for a year to supervise a team. And all the while, priesthood never left my mind, and it was only becoming clearer and clearer that the Lord was calling me to the Diocese of Dallas. And finally, in the year of 2018, after I'd finished my time with NET, was like, this is the time now to say yes, to start seminary. And so that's kind of my journey towards priesthood, ways that, I've seen the Lord protect me from things, bring people into my life to lead him closer to him. And this is, graces that I've experienced in his mercy and his love and just direction. And so I went through seminary for 7 years, 2 years at Holy Trinity, 4 years at Notre Dame in New Orleans, and then 1 year I was up at St. Gabriel's in McKinney for pastoral year. And it was a really rich time throughout formation, so much that I received in ways that I'd received a lot already from my time at St. Thomas, from my family, even from my years with NET, but then seminary on top of that was all the more preparation, formation to be a priest. And so it was a huge shock when Bishop Burns told me that I'm going to St. Anne's. I did not think that in the slightest, that this is where I'd be sent, but I'm overjoyed that I am back at St. Anne's for this year and hopefully for more time than that. And I've been loving, priestly life. It's been beautiful to serve in the confessional as a priest, to celebrate the Holy Mass, to walk with people in very difficult moments as well as joyous moments. My first wedding as a priest, I'd done one last year as a deacon, but as a priest was this Wednesday, and so it was really a very special moment for a friend who I'd known for the last 5 years. And so, this is what the Lord has done in some ways in my life to bring me here, and I hope that in sharing this, in some way it's a blessing to you to see that, just how the Lord works, right? You never, again, I did not think as a young man that I would be a priest, but the Lord, he knows the path, and the path might be longer than you expect even at times, but he's the one guiding it. So continue to be faithful in your own prayer life and praying for priests, and because we could, we desire more priests, more laborers as priests in the vineyard. So thank you guys for letting me share my story with you, and God bless you all. Sure. That was a Q&A time? Okay.
If anybody has any questions, Father's willing to.
How did your parents take this?
How did my parents take it? It was tough for them at first. I think just not quite understanding. I think the desire for priesthood, you can work in the church in other ways, and so why not just work in the church as a lay minister or something. But my parents, they're supportive, right? And they've I think it's
come around.
For sure. And they weren't hostile in any way. It was just more of, I think as parents, you want to why are you thinking about whatever it is, it's why are you thinking about this? Why are you doing this? And it was kind of the same way with when I said I'm going to leave school for a year to go serve as a missionary, I got some pushback as well for that. But then they got to experience my time on NET. They got to come up, and my mom got to see me put on a retreat at St. Monica's. They came up to the wrap-up week, and I think that they got to see the goodness of it. And I think that's going to be even more so the same as the years progress too, seeing the beauty of the priesthood through their son. So, yeah. Cool. Other questions? Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.